Hi, Ann Shibani here. If you're one of those people who are lucky enough to have loads of content, you're going to want to listen up. Because it's one thing to have loads of content, it's another thing entirely to know how to put the pieces, all of those disparate bits of content, together into a satisfying book, how to structure that. So that's what this video is all about today. A couple weeks back, I had a good friend who knows that I'm a major history and geography nerd, drop this book off at the house. It's 1847. It was written by a Northern Irish journalist by the name of Turtle Bunbury. And can you imagine having the name Turtle during grade school? You're beaten up in the boys' room. Anyway, Turtle was raised in Northern Ireland in a house that was built in 1847. And because of the year his house was built, this began to stir his imagination. He began to pay attention to all of the events that were taking place across the world, all of the people that were popping up in that year in the history books, and it became his lifelong passion. So Turtle went out all across the world, and he began to collect these stories, write these stories about people who were noteworthy in that year, events that took place in that year. And he eventually compiled a collection of 35, 40 stories. I don't know how many stories he ended up with. And then it came time to put it into a book. And I have no doubt that this was a conundrum for him. What am I going to do with these seemingly disparate stories? So I would imagine one of the ideas he had is, let me take these stories and divide them up in the continents that they took place in, where these events happened, where these people made a name for themselves. And he may have said, okay, there are 7 continents, so I'll put all of the stories that have something to do with Europe in the European continent, and I'll take the one story, that goes into Polynesia, and I'll put it into, is it Asia or is it Australia? And he no doubt discovered that there was an imbalance, that structure that he would impose on his stories wasn't going to work, that it in fact created more problems than it solved, that there was no symmetry, which meant he would have had to rip all of the bricks apart. He would have had to, unconnect them from each other and try to impose a different structure on them. So the structure he ended up landing on was 1847 is a year, 12 months in a year. He decided that he was going to organize his stories based on months of the year, January obviously through December. So he took, one story that took place in the United States, the Comanches, the Trail of Tears, and he placed that in January. There were a couple of stories that he could tie to the month of February. There were maybe 6 stories in the month of March. And even though these weren't completely symmetrical, there weren't, an equal number of stories in each of the months. The structure provided a pretty satisfying way to read these stories. What no doubt happened during the revision process, placing it in this structure, is that he had to make some kind of tie between the event that he described in a story and a particular month he had chosen to place this story in. So all of this, what am I talking about? Is this about 1847? No. If you have a lot of content, if you do not know how to organize that content so it reads like a book, you're going to want to go to your own bookshelf. If you're writing a book to attract clients and it is an inspirational book, don't just look at other inspirational books. Pull a history book off the shelf. Pull a how-to book off the shelf. Pull a novel off the shelf and study the table of contents. Study how the author chose to organize the stories so that it read smoothly, so that the flow from one story into the other made sense. Could he have done it? Could he have been totally random and dropped the stories in willy-nilly? Maybe. But notice how any of the books on your shelves provides the structure for these stories, provides a flow. And that's what we're all about when we're writing books, making it easy for the reader to understand how the stories all fit together and to have an experience and understand the message. Anyway, hope you find this helpful. Talk soon.